You had mentioned that early on that some of those mentors popped up in your life. Who are those?
The early ones, first and foremost, I had my grandmother and my grandfather. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and they were a proper matriarch patriarch partnership. And we had this huge family that would gather on like a weekly, bi-weekly basis, 80, 70 people, aunts, uncles, cousins. And that feeling and idea of extended family really stretched to Summit in a sense. You know, the feeling of what it's like to have that size of people that you can like trust and depend on and love, that you know are going to take pleasure in your successes. It's kind of a different phenomenon. It's a bit lonely as an entrepreneur, and it's competitive, and man, business is shrewd. You know, everybody's looking out for themselves in a sense to, it's mutually beneficial for you to succeed like it is with family. Then it's a different thing, right? So that was always how we thought about Summit. It was like, really, are these people that we'd want to have around our families, be friends with, regardless of their professional success? And then I think the most foundational, single person in those early days was a guy named Tony Hsieh, who's since passed away. He was the founder
Tony,
and
great
CEO
guy.
Yeah, he was the founder and CEO of Zappos, and he was an incredible mentor and patron and friend to us. And when we threw our White House event in 2009, about a month into the Obama, presidential term, we brought 50, really tremendous entrepreneurs from all around the country. And what they had asked us to do is like, hey, who are the most influential under 40 entrepreneurs? Who are the people that, we have to know? And that was the prompt. And so after the event, we're at the bar, we're hanging out, and Tony comes up and he's like, hey guys, are there people here that you wouldn't have at your parents' house and, for dinner and be their friend if they didn't have their personal or professional success? And we were like, yeah, there's certainly, of course, but like, that's not what we were asked to do. And he said, well, they can't come anymore. Because if you're building a community, which now is 2022, you hear this language, but then at 24-year-olds, this was a revelation. If you're building community, culture is your most important thing. And so you can only really bring people in that feed and fill your culture. And we stayed up all night that night and really came up with the foundational principles about who we include in Summit. Are you, an innovator in your field, regardless of discipline? And are you a kind, open-minded person that we want to be around regardless of personal, professional success? And so, praise to Tony.
It's interesting. I know Tony. I was a judge on Celebrity Apprentice for a couple of years. Tony was one of the sponsors of that show and did his stick there. And we got to be friends. Result of it, he sat next to me on one of the finales one time. Shy, like introverted kind of guy. And I used to love to get together in Vegas. I'd always go see him and Penn Jillette. Penn Jillette was the other one I'd always go see when I'm in Vegas, have dinner or something. And Tony, we just sit around and just talk. And what a unique young man he was, and a lot of people would think he would have been much more extrovert, but he was I thought, a very shy kind of guy. Did you find that with him?
Of course, he was one of the only real introverts that he brought pleasure and joy by community, and yet was incredibly introverted. So it was a complicated setup to both be fed and discomforted by people in a sense.
It just shows you that everybody can win no matter who you are. And it's really cool. And he did a great job in that. In the book, you say authenticity trumps perfections. What do you and your other co-authors mean by that?
We're much more interested in the real person sitting in front of us than your best efforts in convincing us of what you think we want to see, right? Like if you're trying to be a character that in your estimation, the person in front of you is most interested in, then you're losing. If you can express yourself from the things that you're actually doing and you're actually passionate about, then it doesn't really matter if these people resonate with you or not. You'll find your tribe, you'll find your people. And, action begets more action. Once the search is in progress, something will be found. So to sit and wait and plot and ponder and tinker until the thing is perfect, you never get there. Nothing's ever perfect. And I think that especially when community engagement is important and you need other people to join your movement, you gotta take action, and you gotta be prolific. And it's impossible to be, prolific and perfect. You can be pensive and do a few small things every once in a while, but if you want to go big, it's typically, wars aren't fought on one front in one battle. It's a lot of energy and a lot of effort, and we're also inch by inch kind of guys. So like if you're, the way that we talk about it is that 99% of the entrepreneurs at Summit and in our community and ourselves personally, we're smart enough. Like we are smart enough and capable enough, and we can engage other smart people. And together, our tree has deep roots. And then there's 1% of entrepreneurs who are just freak show geniuses that can literally do it all themselves. Tony was kind of like that. Tony is that smart, and they're the founder, they're the CEO, they sign every check, they can do it all. So I think that if you can play a perfect game, then yeah, by all means, play a perfect game. But that's probably not the majority of people listening.
Exactly. And I always say a brand is nothing but a promise delivered. And we've all heard about living the brand, but in the book, you tell a story about how your team really did it in Miami. It's pretty unconventional. How did it come to be?
This was 2010. It's before Airbnb and VPRO and Zillow, and this is before a resurgent, Miami that we see today. There was 40 or 50,000, I think, units in Miami and Miami Beach that were unfilled at this time. Now you can't get a house or an apartment within 20 miles of the city. We would do from the start of Summit, there were 4 of us, and we all lived together. And then we hired 3 more people, and they lived with us, and we would travel to a new city every 6 to 8 weeks. And we would find a place that had either been for sale for a long time and hit up the agent and say, hey, this is who we are. This is the work that we do. We treat your house like a national park, leave no trace. And we do good work from it. We'll of course pay rent. And if you want to show the house, or if you sell the house, kick us out. And we did this in Nicaragua, we did this in Tel Aviv, we did this in London, we did this all over the US. We scaled from 4 people to 20 people in the house, to the point where we had like a chef that was shopping for everybody and cooking breakfast and lunch and dinner. And I think we were paying $8.33 per meal per person pre-tax, right? Because it was coming out of our paycheck. And so we had found all these different hacks, but we would find these just palaces in Miami. You're talking about Miami in particular. We found a house on Star Island that since of course got knocked down. They built some beautiful, mega mansion, but this property was gorgeous. And the house was like pretty, I don't know, a little dilapidated, but old, kind of like Spanish style, probably 15,000 square foot indoor outdoor mansion with like statue. Like we were kids, we were in our 20s, and we were all pooling cash, and the company was pooling some cash. And I don't think I was paying more than like $1,500 or $2,000 a month for rent. And then our staff, of course, all were paying, $1,000 or $800 or whatever. And it was amazing because like we would host people once a week, and then of course we'd host people all the time. But this is before we really had built a vibe. And we'd have some entrepreneur, athlete, or artist come over to the house, and our whole company would ask them questions, and we'd eat dinner. We'd make them jump on a trampoline or something silly and juvenile. The most impactful part though is that when you build so much bond and camaraderie, you get a lot of work done. And then at night, you're just chopping it up on ideas. You're at dinner, it's ideas. You're in the study, it's ideas. You're, like walking on the road to go to a workout. It's just, there's this constant touch point. And that leads to a lot of buy-in, a lot of passion, a lot of like meaningful connection to the company. And I think that today, especially in an era where company culture is suffering so meaningfully, it's more important to get out in the world with your coworkers, have fun, dynamic, shared experiences, because then you actually like each other. You actually trust each other. You want to help each other. It's not like because you get paid to be there.
Exactly. And what a great lesson to be able to learn. Jeff, thanks so much for being a part of All Business here. Jeff and Rosenthal, who we've been talking to, his business partners, recently co-authored a new book, Make No Small Plans, Lessons on Thinking Big, Chasing Dreams and Building Community. Jeff, thanks for being with us on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Hey, at the end of every show, I like to talk about what I learned. And the key word that I learned from Jeff was being naive. A lot of times as business leaders, we go into something about not knowing what we don't know. He, in fact, said he traded off wisdom for hustle. And that's what it'll sometimes take to be successful in any business endeavor. So hats off to Jeff and his partners, Summit Series. That's what I learned right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett.